Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of this podcast. This week, I was given the wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to Gareth, and myself and Gareth are both from Salisbury. It was very, very good to catch up with him. And he is a design professional, and he does some branding bits as well, and creates logos and that kind of thing. And he has a very interesting story, and we were able to get into some leadership challenges and some other bits and some business challenges that has really kind of come and and really showcased what the business journey growth actually is, when you're growing a business. So I'm now going to hand over to Gareth, and he'll be able to explain a little bit more about what he does and a little bit more about his journey. So thank you to him, and enjoy the episode.
Morning, everybody. My name's Gareth, and I'm a graphic designer. My business is Design Pit, and we do all sorts of creative work within the sort of B2B sort of arena. So I work with businesses on brand development, graphic design projects for print, design projects for the web, social media content. And I've also launched an online print shop recently as well. So people, what I've found is, as a designer, I get asked to print a lot of the stuff that I've designed. So that can be quite a time-consuming process when you're sourcing suppliers to print stuff and doing a margin, creating it out, and then adjusting prices, adjusting quotes as and when customers come back and ask for different quantities, and so on and so forth. So I decided to sort of take that and just stick it all online, so people can basically sort of like cut out a bit of the legwork of waiting for me to do the quotes for them, and they can just basically enter their specs online and get a quote themselves and sort of like upload the artwork that they've got and buy like that. So it's graphic design, branding and print in the main, but I do a lot of work on web projects as well with Pixel. So it's quite broad. It's just me. It's small. It has been bigger. When I set the business up in 2012, I grew it, and we got to, I think the biggest, there was 5 of us at one point for a few months. And then we relocated in 2020 during the pandemic, or the height of the pandemic, really, in the summer then. Obviously, relocating from the Midlands down to Wiltshire, the business needed to change. So there was some restructuring went on, shall we say. I'm all up and running here in sunny Salisbury now.
That's not specifically sunny today, but welcome to the podcast. And I think it's really good to sort of explore a little bit more of your background, a little bit more, because everyone's journey into business is very different, and I think it's important because I think there's lessons we can all learn from that journey, right? Like, what was the main thing? Because in theory, like, you could have gone from, okay, I've got a team of 5 and we're going to move down to the south, right? Why didn't you either like try to replace your team of 5 or move a team of 5 down, or, do the thing that was like heightened at the time, which was like remote working and still kind of is, like, because I imagine in what you do, you could have transitioned to remote working quite quickly.
Yeah, effectively, my business has always been a remote working organisation in a way. I think remote working's changed since COVID. When I've always had offices. I've always rented the space. When it was me in the early days, I moved out of the home office that I had and took a dedicated space, because I find I'm a bit more productive in a dedicated space away from home. So I will go out to clients and see them at their premises and bring the work back to my office. So in that respect, there's always been an element of remote working in the business. Now, since COVID, obviously everyone's doing everything from home, so the shift for me wasn't as difficult, but I find I'm not as productive when I'm in the house. There's too many distractions in my home. So I'm very fortunate. We've got a separate building at the back of our property here, which is an old garage, which I've converted into an office space for me to work from. So in the morning, I get up and physically leave my house and come to this dedicated space. And I find I'm a lot more productive down here than I would be if I was in a spare bedroom up at the house. In terms of like the scale of the business and everything, there were some changes that I had to make in 2019 that weren't necessarily directly related to COVID, but in hindsight, they were like good things to have done when I did them, not knowing COVID was coming. Like the business took a bit of a hit in the light of Brexit, where there was a lot of uncertainty around Brexit and what was going to happen after it eventually happened, because it seemed to drag on for bloody ages. And I had 3 clients that I'd sort of worked very hard to secure, that I was working with month to month, quarter to quarter, on banker work that we did year on year. And all of a sudden, because they were ingrained with Europe, and they had supply chain there, or they were selling to Europe, or whatever, or they had offices there, their model changed quite dramatically to get ready for Brexit. And a lot of the work that we were doing at that time was put on the cut list. So it either didn't happen or was drastically cut back. In 2019, I've been pushing water uphill for a while at this point. But basically in 2019, I was a third of my turnover down, which was a real kick in the teeth, to be honest, because I've not done anything wrong. I'd not done anything wrong, and it just changed. So that was one of the starting point of things changing for Design Pit. And by the end of the year, I'd scaled it right back. We'd gone from the dedicated office space back to me working at home, and then obviously COVID hit. So the things that people had to do quite quickly when COVID hit, I was actually in the process of doing anyway, and some of it I'd already done. So it was less of a sort of like shock to me. But so that's where I sort of ended up. And then obviously the relocation came, and when we got down here, the office was built. That was the first priority, and I've sort of hit the ground running from there.
Fantastic. I mean, I think it's a key example of some of the footfalls or challenges that every business will eventually run into in one way or another, right? Whether it's Brexit, whether it's COVID, whether it's recession, whether it's etc. There's always going to be challenges, right? There's always going to be knockbacks. There's always going to be things that are out of your control. And from what I found anyway, it's about how you react, right? It's the stuff's going to happen whether you like it or not, unfortunately. And from there, you can choose whether you're willing to be like, okay, I need to make some changes here. There may be challenging changes or maybe difficult changes, but they're necessary to keep the business, quote unquote, alive. And I think definitely the pandemic or Brexit or both definitely showed people that, business can change overnight, and they need to have some level of scale back plan, or some level of like, what's worst case scenario here, what do we do if XYZ happens, right? Like, and I think with a lot of what you do, to an extent, it's quite fortunate, because as the world looks to actually showcase and actually get to the point where they were going to actually get their life in order, so to speak, or you kind of get hit when you're not expecting it. And I think there's a lot to be learned from the pandemic and Brexit and anything else that actually happens, because it's one of those things where as you develop as a business owner, the more that happens to you, in my experience anyway, you don't get really fazed by those larger changes, because you're like, well, I survived. Like, I'll give you an example. We survived COVID. Okay, cool. We survived 3 months without income. Okay, cool. So no matter how deep, quote unquote, the recession is going to be now, it can't be as bad. To be honest, it just can't. If I'm making any money, it's better than it was. So, what's my excuse in not growing or not sustaining or etc. But what, I mean, was there a mindset change? I mean, has there been a mindset change after that kind of restructure had to happen for you, where it's like, actually maybe this is a better way of doing it for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that happened to lots of other businesses, and certainly some of my clients when COVID hit, I'd already been through, and because of the, I didn't foresee the all three of my bigger clients turning the taps off. I anticipated one of them might change their buying patterns and need to adjust the way they work, but not all three of them. So I kind of had to make some sort of tough decisions before COVID hit. But I think one thing that COVID has been good for is a lot of businesses that I know, a lot of business owners, a lot of my clients, collaborators, colleagues, whatnot, they've all become much more aware of their of the baggage that their business sort of carries. There's lots of stuff that they've looked at and gone, well, I don't need that. Why am I doing that? That's a waste. I think we will, as business owners, we will naturally become less wasteful from living through COVID. Being agile, being lightweight, allows you to adjust and change direction when shit hits the fan, basically. When I had to make some of those tough changes, to give you an example of my own experience, like my overhead, when I had a beautiful office in leafy Staffordshire, north of Birmingham, on an old farm, and it was absolutely stunning office. It was 500 square feet. We had table football, we had a breakout area with a big red sofa, we had the Macs all up on nice desks. It was absolutely stunning. It was a brilliant creative space. £1,000 a month. I had 2 staff at the point when I had to make the changes. I had 2 designers working with me. We had all the insurances in place. We had the computers were on finance. Everything was loaded, overhead. At the point where I had to make those changes, to stand still, my overhead was £9,000 a month. And that was before I made a bean. Yeah. So when people say, oh, you start every month from zero, you don't. You start every month from minus £9,000. So before I make a penny to take home to pay my mortgage, I've got to put 10 grand in that bank as a minimum every month. And for a period of time, we were doing really well. We'd be hitting 15, 16 grand a month, and it was like happy days. This is great. This is going well. And then something happens and that changes. So, like now, having gone through that process, I got my overhead down. Like my overhead is about 1,400 quid a month now. So it's a massive, massive difference. And, I think a lot of people have gone through that process through COVID. They've looked at what they pay out every month. They've looked, and ultimately, like for small businesses, like the money is like, the cash flow is what kills small businesses. If it ain't there, it ain't there. And I think a lot of people have looked at that and gone, let's get this more efficient. Let's work lighter. Let's be more agile.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's one of those things, and it gives a very valid point, because I think the illusion can be sometimes, oh, this person makes loads of money, right? Like, because the thing is that people look at our prices, or they look at what we do, and they look at, oh my God, he's really expensive, or she's really expensive. But what they don't appreciate or don't, think in, unless they're a business owner, is, okay, well, what are the costs related to that? What is the actual profit margin on it, right? Because and then what is the model, right? Is it small amount of customers or clients with higher profit margin, or huge volume, right? And then like tiny percentage on each customer. But either way, you still need to understand how they make money to then understand why their costs are reflective, if that makes sense. So, because I think it's something that's misunderstood.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like, just because someone's driving around in a brand new Audi A6 or whatever doesn't mean they're absolutely rolling in it. It's probably leased. That was me. Like, I used to pull up at a petrol station just before we moved down here, just when it was all going a bit wrong, actually. And I'd got my nice little motor, well, rather large motor actually, my nice motor, I pulled up at a petrol station next to a gang of lads in a tarmacking truck. And one of my mates from school, who I'd not seen for years and years, was hanging out the window going, "All right, kid. Fucking hell, mate, that's a nice motor. You must be doing all right." And that's the perception. But inside, I was dying inside, because that afternoon, I had to go back to my office and put my staff at risk of redundancy. And people don't see that. So it's all perception. It's all bullshit. And, yes, it's nice to have a nice motor to drive around in. But as a business owner, you know that you work hard to get that. You work hard for that luxury. And yes, it's nice. And yes, it looks good and all of that. But don't be. I think people who don't work for themselves don't always understand how draining and demanding it can be, to sort of live that life, as it were. So yeah, I know where you're coming from there.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that as well, because it's not like we work all the hours that the day gives. Maybe some of us do, maybe there's times where we do. But what we say when it's draining is we don't mean that. We mean mentally draining, because we can't, I don't know whether you have this, but I have it personally, where when I'm not in the business, even when I'm doing something that's quote unquote fun, or I'm with family, there's still a part of my brain that's going, I need to do that when I next go into the office. I need to do this. There's this thing coming up, etc. And it doesn't stop. The only time it stops is when you're actually asleep. And I actually think my brain's still doing it. I just can't feel it or see it.
You don't switch off. You don't switch off, do you? You can't. Because if you're passionate about something, then you'll always be tuned into it. You'll always be thinking like that. So I totally get, like this morning, I woke up before my alarm went off, and I lay there thinking about the Christmas card design that I've got to do today. And I lay there and I was working it out in my head, waiting for my alarm to go off. And then when the alarm went, I sort of allowed myself to get up and go down and make the coffee. But and I do that. Like, that happens more often than not. My alarm's tuned for 5:45 every day. Invariably, I'm awake at 5:30 thinking about what I need to add to the list. And, like Sarah, my wife, she is so funny, because she'll whinge at me for being on my phone when we're watching a film or something. But I'm there, I'm actually doing like Facebook posts and or LinkedIn posts and scheduling things in. So it's not like I'm sat there like watching TikTok, wasting my life away or whatever. But I'm there doing something productive because I thought of something that would be worthwhile posting on a particular day. So I'm scheduling it in. But the only time I stop, if truth be told, is when we go away. If I get on a plane and leave the UK, I do tend to sort of like stop. But even if we're away, if we go for like, I don't know, a weekend in Wales or something like that, I don't really stop thinking about work. But that's probably something like a bit of a tip of advice for someone who's looking to start. Try and find a space, a place, wherever it may be, that you can actually go off, and find a bit of space. And maybe that's something for you. You need to find that space and a place, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I have it, but it's still like, it just numbs it to an extent. Like, it's not fully off, right? Like, for me. But the thing is, for me, I know, I kind of get why, because I'm still very driven to go, and I've still got a very large hunger for where I want to go and where I want to do. And I think that, it's a balance that everyone needs to know the answer to, because everyone's balance is different. But, for me, from my experience and what I've done and talking to other business owners, it's one of those things where you need to understand what is necessary and then what requires in the business, as you were talking about, just now. Sometimes you do have to work late, and you need to be okay with that, because I think there's an illusion when we're in a 9 to 5 or we're looking to work for ourselves where we can be on a beach, right? And we only, or the 4-day work week or etc. And all these things are possible, but they're possible after 15, 20 years, or even, possibly even 10 years of absolute ridiculous hard graft to build something that's large enough to sustain itself on its own, and then also you, and then potentially a team as well.
Yeah, definitely. It does take a lot of graft, and you might have to work. I don't like working late. I prefer to come in early. If I'm sat in here at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm a bit more productive that way. Like after sort of 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm good for nothing. My brain goes to mush, and I'm very much in family mode then. I've always had the mantra of I don't work weekends and I've always been very strict. So although I might be thinking about work and I might be jotting notes down or putting stuff in my phone for Monday, I don't go into the office and I don't do client stuff at all at weekends unless someone is prepared to pay a ton of money to make me do that and sacrifice a weekend. And that's always been my mantra. And I've stuck to it. So I've been quite strict with that. But yeah, it does take hard work, and that is why you can only set up a business if you're very passionate about something, because if you're not passionate about something, you ain't going to put your heart and soul into it.
No. And, there's multiple quotes here, but the one that really jumps to mind is Steve Jobs, and it says, well, if you're passionate about something, it's something along the, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of basically, any other rational person, if you don't love what you do, would have quit, because that's what it takes to do, right? Because it's ridiculous the amount that you have to do to make it work. And if you're refusing to never quit, you'll eventually work. It just is going to take a significant amount of time longer than you initially expect. And I think it also, aligns quite nicely with, my next question, which was going to be, everyone needs a logo. Everyone needs some level of design. And I think sometimes when we start a business, that's something that gets overlooked quite quickly, because most people are wanting to do the practitioner thing, or they're wanting to open the shop, etc. They want to, get that thing they really enjoy doing, right? Why do they go into business in the first place? But what would you say to people who maybe overlook the design element in regards to logos, or the thought process behind the logo design, and how that might affect them in the future?
Yeah, you're right. Like brand identity is often overlooked because people get excited with the idea. They set up and get going and just throw something together and get cracking. And then within like a year, 2 years, they're looking at the logo and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? It looks terrible. It looks unprofessional. And, it's on everything. So changing it is going to be a pain in the ass. So that is reason enough to work with a professional, basically, because if you're a landscape gardener, like best will in the world, like you're probably not going to be a great graphic designer. Equally, I'm a graphic designer. Like I can trim my hedges, yeah, but I haven't got the right kit, the right experience. I don't even know what the bushes like. I don't even know what bushes they are. They're just green, like there might be a particular way of cutting them to encourage growth upwards, or I don't know any of that shit. So if I'm gonna get that job done, I'd probably get a tree surgeon or a landscape gardener in to do it. I'm not going to try and do something that I don't really understand. And unfortunately for graphic designers, and there'll probably be a lot of people out there agreeing and sympathizing with me here, like everyone's got a pair of eyes, but just because you've got a pair of eyes doesn't necessarily mean you know what's good in terms of logo design and brand identity. So work with someone who has that skill. I went to university for 3 years, and I started in 2005, so showing my age there. But I do think that people need to switch their thought process to a different place when it comes to logos. Your logo is the brand bearer. It's not your brand. It doesn't represent your brand in its entirety. It's part of your corporate identity. And the logo is the first thing that prospects and potential long-term clients will come into contact with. That is the first thing that they'll see. And that thing, that logo, that mark, it should be well designed and well executed and applied consistently across all of the touch points that prospect will go through, up to the point where they place an order with you. So it's really important to get it right.
Yeah, and I think it aligns with your content as well, because once you have a strong logo that you can firstly get your team behind, but also if you have a team or you can get behind, it gives you a lot more credibility, a lot more strength from what I found. And for me, I put a lot of thought and energy into the logo, and that's why I've never had to change it, because I did that heavy lifting at the start, right? Like, I was quite fortunate because I have a game development background, so I learned Photoshop quite quickly, etc., etc., etc. You know, not to the level of a graphic designer would understand it, but from what my needs was at the time, I knew enough, right? And it does the job. And for me, it was then about, okay, developing what does that logo then mean to the wider market, right? What does that brand actually mean, especially in Salisbury? That's for me, what do I want Brunton Media to mean for Salisbury? What do I want it to be for Salisbury? How does it actually, when people talk about it, I think it was said, again, another kind of, you can pick a load of different quotes here, but it's one of those things where branding is what they say when you're not in the room, right? So it's similar to your reputation, and I'd argue they are one and the same. But basically, if you have a good reputation or a good brand, people are going to talk in other rooms that you're not in, and it's only going to be good things that they say.
I agree. I'd 100% agree. I've done a couple of podcasts and a couple of joint blog entries with a guy, a business consultant who specialises in marketing up in the Midlands, and we've always agreed on this. But a lot of small businesses, I haven't got a brand. I don't need. That's what for big businesses. Well, if you sell on your reputation, then yes, you do have a brand, because they are absolutely one and the same thing. Like, developing that reputation is branding effectively. That's what it's all about. It's exaggerating the good stuff that supports and hypes up your reputation, and dousing the flames if something goes bad that could harm that reputation. It's about sort of like playing that down. So it's amplifying the good and dampening the bad. That is effectively like brand development. That is what it is. You do that visually as well. But a brand isn't anything tangible. You can't pick up a brand. You can't hold it in your hands. And all your logo and your identity do is visually deliver that brand. So when you see like the Nike tick, for example, you think quality sportswear, Michael Jordan, all of these things that are associated with Nike are associated with it very deliberately, because they've developed their brand to sort of like appeal to a certain level of amateur athlete or professional athlete, and their values are based on quality, performance, endurance, and all of these sort of good things that get wrapped up with Nike. So when you see that logo, subconsciously your brain goes, "Oh, that's Nike," and that's how it makes me feel. And that's the brand. It's that connection between what people think when they see your identity, and that's what that branding is in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand that role in branding and the values that go behind it, but also the role it plays in marketing. And that, it leads on quite nicely to my next question, which is going to be, marketing is one of those things which a lot of small business owners, or just business owners in general, I think, find very difficult to understand. Because I think there's sometimes, we need to get some more work in. Okay, we should start doing some marketing, and then we're going to get working, right? Like in a quick succession. In my experience, marketing is a very long thing. It's, hey, this is what I do, this is how it's valuable. Hey, this is what I do, this is how it's valuable. Repeatedly for a while, and then the right people will come to you and potentially then work with you. But what would you say to people who either don't understand marketing or want to understand it more? From your experience, like, how would you go about marketing a new business now if you were starting again?
Marketing now is very different to how marketing was when I started. There's a decade gone. So, the thing with marketing is there's a lot of blurred lines around it. So you've got video, what you do. You got the brand and the graphic design and the more static stuff that I do, like day to day. So I think there's a lot of blurred lines around marketing about what you do. For example, like your motion image, what I do, which is more static based imagery. Then you've got sales and marketing. A lot of that time, sales and marketing get sort of like put together. as one entity. It's not, though. Like, marketing touches every facet of a business. And when people say, oh, I'm doing marketing, and they're putting together a leaflet, for example, and they're just putting that out, and they go, oh, I've done my marketing. But marketing's a lot more than that. That's just one element of it. That's like promotion. So, like, your marketing is like analyzing your customer demographics. It's about building a customer avatar. It's about getting your messaging right. It's about developing your brand. It's about measuring the ROI on any marketing campaigns that you actually sort of, invest in. There's so much more. Like, I'm not a marketeer. I'm a graphic designer, but I think I understand marketing a lot more than a lot of people do. And I'm not saying for 1 minute my marketing's perfect, because if it was, I wouldn't be sat here now. I'll be on my yacht somewhere nice and warm. But if I was going to say to someone starting up in business now, focus on social, focus on getting some interesting, nice content out there that really sets you apart, because that's the way the world's going. Develop a strong identity that delivers your brand. But before you can have a brand, you need to have a clear picture of your values and what you want your business to do, customer value proposition, mission statement for the business, and the unique selling proposition. You need to be very clear on those things. Once you know what they are, those 3 sentences, you're going to be in a position to start marketing yourself with a lot more clarity.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's one of the things that, we've seen as well. We do some marketing bits, to support, whether that's for a marketing team or for direct with a business owner. And, one of the main things, as we always say, is, okay, well, what's the hurdle if I give you 15 clients tomorrow because the marketing does amazingly, right? And that's always a thought process you have to think. Whether it will or not is a different conversation. But, what can you serve those 15 clients at a high level right now? And most people say to me, no. Okay, so then the question comes, okay, why can't you? Right? What's the logistical hurdle here? Right? Is it I don't have enough manpower yet? Is it I would need another staff member for that because the workload would be too high? Is it because I don't have the process in place to actually be able to work with someone else and get something else done while I'm doing something else, right? Because one of the main benefits of having a team, quote unquote, is you are no longer limited by the, let's say, 8 hours or 10 hours or 15 hours or however much you're going to work a day. You're no longer limited to that time because you can actually have that times 2 or that times 3 or that times 4. Whenever you do anything with marketing, I think people misunderstand what marketing can be, because like this is a form of marketing. Doing video is a form of marketing. Doing a photo shoot is a form of marketing. Doing some graphics that sit online is a form of marketing, right? Marketing is not this like we do one channel and it's gonna work, because from my experience, you actually have to be doing like multiple channels to have multiple touch points that you hit the same person with in multiple times, right? Like if you hear, for example, Brunton Media on the radio, and then you open Facebook and you see an ad, and then you go onto LinkedIn and you see an ad, or maybe you're driving down the street and then you see a billboard, constantly you're going to be thinking, okay, well, clearly Brunton Media is everywhere. I'll use just Brunton Media as an example, but is everywhere. So what, how, why, what's going on with this company, with this business, with this brand? Because if you have a presence and a constant presence, especially if you're consistent with social content, as you were just talking about as well, what ends up happening is you keep reminding your ideal client or your potential client, hey, I exist. Hey, this is what I do. Hey, this is why I'm valuable.
Yeah, I think one thing to remember is in business, I don't think anything is short term. If it's short term, it's not going to yield any sort of serious results. It's all about being organised and planning ahead, having a goal, working towards that, and keeping your sort of eye on that whilst working in the present. I do think consistency across the board is key, as you were saying. Having a familiar narrative across all media channels is key. And nothing, as you say, nothing short term. Like, you do one video, it's not going to, deliver, 15,000 new orders in a week. It's just not going to happen. And I think you've got to be prepared to be patient. That's a really key thing to remember, I think.
Yeah, it's the same with whenever you grow a business, right? As well, like everything in business takes like 3 times as long than you think it's going to at the start, right? You think, oh, I'm going to be at this milestone, or I'm going to be able to do this or this or this. And then you get to a position where it's like, well, actually, you kind of can't because there's this thing in the way, or etc. And, without going too much in depth with that, but I think it's really important to, and it's a really important point if anyone's going to take away anything from this podcast, is to be patient with what you're doing, right? So whether that's marketing, look at the ROI, look at the metric, and establish that metric, with a video. Okay, what's your metric? What, we don't always tie it to, are you making more revenue? Because sometimes that's not fair. Because sometimes that the reason why you're not making revenue has got nothing to do with the fact that you haven't got a load of potential clients coming through the funnel or etc. Or you haven't got a load of people looking at the video. There's something else wrong. And it's like, okay, so what is the issue then? But if you're patient, it will always be like, and then be clear with your objective when you start. So why are you marketing in the first place? Everyone's marketing to get more money, right? But or more work or more business or to grow or to sustain, etc. But what's under that? Because under that there is normally a reason, right? What's the hurdle in the way? The hurdle in the way of the client is, do they understand what you do? Maybe. Do they know who you are? Maybe. Right? Do you need more awareness around how you are valuable to that potential prospect as well? Right? So these are the things that could be under the we need to make more money part. Right?
I think one thing that people probably forget is that we are more switched on and more receptive to a variety of channels, like in our subconscious now. When you, for example, like you get on the bus or you get on a train or you get on the tube in London or wherever you're going, like if you just take it, like put your phone down, that's probably number one, but look around you and see how many people are sat doing nothing but digesting information from their phone now around you in day-to-day life. Like 20, 30 years ago, that never happened. We would never be sat there staring at a handheld device, and we wouldn't be getting walloped in the face with all of these messages that we get. Like I read somewhere, I can't remember where I heard this now, but it stuck in my head. It was a while ago, but remember when William Wallace was doing his thing in Scotland and killing English people and swinging his big sword around and, trying to basically make Scotland independent? I don't even know what the year was, but it was bloody decades, centuries ago, right? The life of a person living at that time, right, compared to someone living in today's world, the amount of information that we absorb, you and I today, here and now in 2021, the amount of information that we absorb in one day is the equivalent of what the person back then would have absorbed in like 2 years or something like ridiculous. So we are subconsciously so much more receptive. We're much more switched on to brand. Because of the advent of social media, we have a platform to express our opinions, be it good or bad. We can connect so much more quickly with people on the other side of the world, and all of these things are things to remember. Like the average person's values are exaggerated, and our values are much clearer in our own heads. So when you're setting up a business, if you've got a really good, clear idea of who your customer avatar is and what their values are, you can market to them a lot better and be more efficient. But there's so many things to consider when you go about that process of putting that avatar together.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, the age that we're in right now is arguably, yes, is there challenges like everything? Is there, so on and so on and so on. But the actual age we're in right now is the best age to live in. You can find out anything. You can literally learn anything. If you're willing to put the work and time and effort into it, I could say today, actually, I don't want to do videography, or I don't want to do video production. I want to do graphic design. And I could start today, and in 6 to 12 months, I would be, in theory, a graphic designer. If I put the work in and put the effort in, there's no other, like, since the information age, quote unquote, that was impossible. That you couldn't do that. That wasn't a thing that you could just do. Now we can do that, and that's why I always say to people, it's never too late. Whether you've been in a job for a million years and you don't like it for whatever reason and so on, make the sacrifices and start learning how to get out of it then. If that's actually what you truly want to do and that's what your heart wants you to do, it doesn't matter whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Because the sooner you start, the sooner you'll reap the benefit. Right?
No, definitely. I read a book recently by a guy called Mark Manson. It's called Everything's Fucked. And I'd recommend that book to anyone who's starting a business, because it starts off and it's a bit doom and gloom, but by the end of it, I was actually quite enthusiastic about waking up tomorrow morning. It's a really interesting book, that is, and have a read, because that will sort of open your eyes to a lot of stuff. But basically, we're here for, we're not here for an infinite amount of time, and we live in a world now that information is shared freely, wealth is shared freely. So I read, so there's a guy I used to know up in the Midlands who was the CEO of the YMCA in Sutton Coldfield, which is a nice part of Birmingham. And he was saying that if your household brings in £30,000 of income a year into that household, you are in the top 8% of wealthy people worldwide. Top 8%, 30 grand a year puts you in the top 8% of the wealthiest people in the world. Just think about that for a minute, right? And that is the world that we live in now. So, read that book as well, mate. If you read it.
I haven't. It's the issue with me with reading the books. One, I'm a dyslexic, so everything's going to take like 4 times as long. Right, it just is. But also, I simply can't sit there and read because I've normally got something else that I should be doing that isn't sit there and reading. Unfortunately, I need to allocate more time to doing it. But I think the main crux there is find a way to consume information, right? Like, because I always ask people when they recommend books, is there an audio version? Because I'll demolish the audio version in like a week, because I don't even need to think, because literally it's just like, I'm commuting somewhere or I'm doing something or whatever it may be. Okay, let's get an hour in now, half an hour in now, 15 minutes in now, etc. And eventually what will happen is you've done like the equivalent of like 200 pages in like a day.
Yeah. Now, there is an audio version of that, and I think you'd really like it, actually. I'm glad you asked that question, because it's just sort of twigged my memory. But I read it I'm not a big reader, but I've set myself a challenge of reading a book a month this year, and I'm on course. I'm on my 11th now, and we're in November, so that's good. But that was a book I read in a month in October. That was number 10. But yeah, have a look at that. I'll send you a link if I can find it. But we live in a world where information, data is more valuable than money.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point, because, it's one of those things, and I think that, there's a psychological study that I use quite a lot of the time, where basically 11 guys went into a room, 1 female went into the room, 10 of the guys really was like, going, oh my God, you're pretty, oh my God, you're really beautiful, blah, 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 blah. But what guy did she want? The one guy that wasn't paying her attention, right? And the same is true with anything that you want, right? When you... Like, let's say I want money, right? Let's say that's the thing I want. Okay, if I just think about I want money, I'm not going to get any money, right? If I think about everything else that goes alongside that, building a good business, building a good process, building good marketing, building good content, you'll make money. Money will come, right? And you'll get to a point, in my experience anyway, where you'll be so experienced in the concept of, because money's going to come, whether no matter what you do, you're going to spend it, and then you're going to get some more. Then you're going to spend it, then you're going to get some more, etc. And the cycle repeats. And the point there is to understand that that's okay, and the fact that once you are in a rhythm, and once you know what the metrics are in how do you serve your clients, but also how do you get new clients, what your process is, you're no longer worried or scared about, oh my God, what if I lose a client tomorrow? because you know what the tactitional ideas are, or you know what you have to do to quote unquote get a new client, right? In our cases, we're client led, right? But I think it's an important point. The same could be true in customers, the same could be true in products, and the same is true whenever you talk to anyone who's been in business for a long time. There's certain processes and certain things that just are there and need to be there, right? And will always be valuable, and will always allow your business to run better and stronger and become. And also, the ideal is to get to the point where the business can run without your specific input all the time, right? So should it have your input? Yes, of course, it's your business, but it shouldn't be at such a level where, for example, if I need to go away on holiday or I'm ill for a week or whatever, the business stops because of that. It should be, and everyone's drive, if they're not there, and me included, should be to get the business to a point where you have the right people in place, you have the right structures in place, you have the right policy, whatever, however you want to phrase it, so that it can function without you, but it accelerates with you. That's my kind of thought process on that. It can sustain without you, so it's continually going to serve the clients you have, but it's not going to necessarily grow necessarily, but it can still work. It can still happen. There's still things that can actually go ahead, and projects can still happen with or without your complete input. Should things come to you still? Of course. Quality control should still be there, of course. But it's more about, understanding that. For me, I struggled with, and I paused because I was thinking how to articulate it. And I think the main way is, for me, one of the growth opportunities for the last year was to remove the control and be okay with the fact that I wasn't shooting and filming and editing everything that we were doing. And since I did that and made that decision, the quality of what we've been able to achieve has been so much higher, because I'm able to bring in people who are perceivably better than me, but also people who are just focused on how does it sound? How does it look? That's it. They don't have to worry about what we're talking about. They don't have to worry about where we're going, what we're doing, etc. Because the more things that you have to worry about, the less you're focusing on each thing, right? So if you only have one thing, like I've only got a logo to design today, in your case, right? Okay, so you're going to give all of your focus and all of your energy and all of your thought process on that logo.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you grow in a business as well, it's important to taking on your first member of staff when you grow, because ultimately growth is really driven by capacity, the capacity to do more. So in our industry, capacity is driven by having the right people in the right roles. So for me, when I employed the first time, I did it completely wrong. Which I won't go into now, but when I got it right, I employed someone who was a better graphic designer than me, someone who was better technically with the software than me, someone who was solely focused and driven by the design, the layout, the impact. Naturally, as a business owner, that is important, and that's why you do what you do. But you've also got one eye on the finance and the turnover, you've got a lot more that's clouding your brain space. But if you get someone who is better than you at one specific element, that is the person to employ. So if you want to employ a designer that's better than you. If you want to employ an animator, get someone who is better than you are. If you want to have a office manager, get someone who's more organized than you. Because if they're not as organized as you, then why the hell are they there? Effectively, you were saying about when you were out and go on holiday for a week, the business shouldn't stop. Well, no, if you're growing it to that level, then no, it shouldn't. But you could be there and just literally sit there and just watch what everything, goes on in a day in your studio, wherever you are. If you've grown it right, then you could not do anything and be there, but it would still run just as well. That is utopia for a lot of business owners, and it's what everyone's chasing. There's a few people have got there, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, but Mr. McDonald's as well. McDonald's runs like that. But it depends what your goals are as well. I had that goal once upon a time. I wanted to have the big business and take me out of it, still run just as well and as efficiently. Getting to that point is hard work, hard work, and you will end up spending and wasting a lot of time, money, and effort getting to a point where you get one win, um, and then you're on to the next hurdle and the next hurdle and the next hurdle. So it's a hamster wheel as well, and the chances are you're never going to get 100% efficient business that is completely not reliant on you being there, because as small businesses, like, people buy from me because they get on with me, so I'm inherently, crucial to the performance of Design Pit.
And there'll always be an element of that, right? But I think it's about getting it to a principle where you don't need to work 15 hours, for example, right, or 12 hours every day, right? Of course, the utopia is you can take me out for a week and then the business is made like £1 million when I wasn't there. Okay, fantastic, great, wonderful. But also, it also is in a position where that becomes very corporate, that becomes less personal, that becomes etc. But you need to remember that all the brands that we see as non-personal, Amazon, Coca-Cola, etc., they all had people at the start. They all built off, I'm building my personal reputation with this brand, till it got to a size where it no longer was that one person. That transition is always hard. That transition is where sometimes you have to fall back. That's sometimes where you fall, etc., because it is not an easy transition. But it's a transition that if you want to go there, and that's a very key point that you've made, is you want to go there, right? You need to want it. And for me, I've always known that I've wanted to grow, and I've wanted to build a team, and I've wanted to grow to a different size, and I've always wanted to be bigger than just me. I've always wanted it to be that. So it will be, because that's always what I've wanted it. At the moment, right, that might change. I might get down that road, halfway down it, and realise, actually, why am I adding more overheads? Why am I adding more stress? Why am I adding more this, when I could just scale back, make what I need to make, have a handful of team or no team, and be completely okay and completely happy, and then be able to prioritise other things in my life?
Yeah. It's a very personal question. It's a very personal thing, that, and I'm probably sitting more in that camp now than the other. I've been in the other place, and where I've been driven by growth, and having that all-encompassing beast, and I got a certain sort of length of the way down that road to get in there. And the knockback was a big knockback, and you have to restructure and go again. What I found is that I actually, the more I grew it, the less design I did. And at first that wasn't a bad thing, because I was quite enjoying like the role I'd sort of like shaped for myself, like not really knowing I'd shaped it. And then when I had to make the changes, I actually realised how much I miss sitting down, getting my sketch pad out, and actually doing some drawing. I miss that incredibly. And if I got to a point now where I wanted to grow the business again, which might happen in the next year or two, who knows, things change, I'd do it very differently. And it wouldn't be to grow it to a point where, I've got tons of staff, because then I'm not going to be doing any design. I'm just going to be managing people, and that's not what I'm doing it for. It would be to bring someone on that would be much more of a sort of senior level, that worked alongside me, whether that would be someone who was employed, or whether that would be someone who was going to buy into the brand. And we then grow together, and work hard to sort of like take it to a new destination, wherever that would be. But that, for the time being, that is one route later down the line. For the time being, I'm quite happy sort of like working in that consultative sort of environment where I work one-on-one with clients, and I'm quite happy right now. But yeah, things change, and they won't stay the same forever, because that's the one constant in life. Things change, and in business, things change quicker.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. And I think, just before we wrap up, I'm conscious of time, but the point I was just going to add to what you were just discussing is the difference between leadership and management. There's a big difference. I mean, for me, what my definition of that is, management is, there's a problem or there's things that need to happen, and I'm going to allocate that job to someone, not go down and do it. Right? The thing is, like, for me, Yes, I bring in people who are better than me, but I was also a videographer for 3.5 years. So if push comes to shove, I pick up a camera and I do whatever's needed, right? We need to film this? Okay, fine, we'll film it. Cool, fine, not a problem, right, etc. Or, oh, something needs to be edited? Okay, cool, let's get it edited, right? And, the same with this podcast, for example. Yes, do I edit it right now? No, right? Can I, in a pinch, if it's needed? Yes, because I did it for a year, right? So, and it's not, once you develop the skill, then you can outsource it. And that's why I always outsource stuff that I know how to do, because in a pinch, or in a world where the outsourced version or for whatever reason it can't happen, and there's nothing against the guys who I outsource to, but life happens, right? Things get in the way, right? Priorities happen, people get sick, whatever. Then you can then the business can still function, then the podcast can still go live, then the podcast can still happen, then the video still gets done, then the client still gets the video, etc. Whatever the thing is, it's still in a position where you aren't so reliant on them. So it's a to and flow situation, right? Should you be reliant? Yes, you should. Should you have them because it saves you time and energy? Yes, you should. But also you should be ready to take back that need or want or whatever it is, that task, because you're still a tactician in it. And that's why I still will always, I think, edit in the business. And I think it's about understanding, how do you grow, and and also understanding if you get away from the growth of actually being a tactician is still, how that's going to hurt your skill. Because if I don't, let's say I haven't edited in 2 years, and then I try and edit, I'm not going to be as fast as if I've been editing yesterday and today. I edit every day. So that's why I'm so fast. People always ask me, how can you turn around things so fast, so on and so on. I edit every single day. That's why. I'm sharpening that knife every single day.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, and that's the thing. If you enjoy that, that's the element you need to retain. So the other bits that maybe you're not as passionate about within your business, it's getting people that are better than you in those areas. So if you've got a camera operator that you think, this guy's amazing or this girl's amazing, if I'm going to employ a camera operator, that's them. That's the one I want. And then that, coupled with your passion, gets you to a better result. But the other thing as well is, then when you grow, you kind of have to let go a bit, because there's an element of control freak and perfectionist in all of us, especially with business owners. But when you're growing and you've brought someone in to do a job for you, if they do that job, a different process to you, but ultimately get to a better result, you can't be picking holes in their process. You need to let them go. And that was one of the hardest things for me when I brought staff on and I built the team. The one lad, Dan, who was brilliant. He was a brilliant designer. He still is. I used to look at the ways he was doing things sometimes, and I'd be like, in my head, why are you doing it that way? Because that's going to take absolutely ages. If it was me, I'd do it this way. And I'd watch some days, and then he'd do something. I'd be like, what the hell? What the hell was that? And, he gets to a better result quicker than I would have done. And you just have to sort of, bite your lip, not, tread on toes all the time. So it's quite hard for some people. But once you've done it once, it does get easier. But it's one of those. But yeah, growth is great. But, you have to, there's a lot of, digging deep and looking inside yourself to let it happen around you.
I think, just adding on that to that last point as well, it's about, having the educational conversation about why someone does something some way, right? Because they can actually educate you. And I think one of the main things, again, moving back to the leadership management thing, leaders, yes, do I quote unquote employ you? Yes, quote unquote, am I this? But there's not this, from how I look at it anyway, I don't ever want there to be this quote unquote hierarchy triangle, right? Of I'm at the top, and then there's people below me, and then there's people below me, and there's people below me. No, it's a circle, right? I'm a member of the team who just happened to start the business, right? Who just happens to own the business and just happens to have employed you all. That's actually nothing to do with the fact that we should be pushing towards, because at the end of the day, you should all be pushing towards the same goal. You should be always, and everyone's going to operate differently, and everyone's going to want to work differently, and that can actually be an asset for you. Because, for example, I have different camera operators who have different skill sets, right? I work with a lot of different camera operators, some that are okay, they're incredible at this thing, but they either don't want to, or they're not as good as this thing. But that's okay, because I've also got someone else who's the vice versa of that situation, which means we just win in both worlds because we're putting people in their places where they are the best suited to, but also they really, really want to be as well. And that's why one of the main things for me as a quote-unquote leader, I ask, what do you want to do? Are you still enjoying it, right? We have a team meeting every month, and in that, the entire point of that meeting is for me to ask, are you enjoying your current role in what you're currently doing and the work you're currently getting? Yes or no? If no, why? What changed? And what work are you looking to do? What opportunities can I give you or thinking about trying to give you in the future to help your growth? Because for me, it's actually, if they grow, whether they stay with me or not, doesn't matter. Because during that growth process, they're still going to benefit the company. And I'm still going to learn things about myself and my leadership style and how I do it to get to a position where everything's like their situation's better in regards to money or in regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it. And also the company's better because the company's stronger. Because I'm becoming better at helping understand what people need from me as a leader as well.
Definitely. Yeah. This podcast's been a bit of a voyage of discovery, really, hasn't it?
It has. It's been very, very good.
Graphic design, and we're into management and leadership and growth, and bloody hell, yeah. It's
and that's why I don't like. People ask me, we're gonna have like structured questions and stuff, and for me, that kind of puts you into the boxes. That kind of locks you into. We can only talk about these things. Which is fine if that's the style you want, and then you want all the podcasts to feel and be very similar in regards to what you're talking about and the answers specifically are what the new things are. For me, because of my style, I like to explore and just see where the conversation leads. And then you normally get the best stuff out of it after you've kind of got off script, so to speak. But, moving a little bit back to script because I'm conscious of time and, I know that we'll both have things to do. But so let's wrap up. But, I like to, at the end of the podcast, give you an opportunity to ask me a direct question or to throw in a topic for us to discuss if there is one. Again, like everyone thinks when I ask them that there's a trick question that they have to come up with something. You don't. But is there anything?
You know what that is? I wasn't expecting that at all. I can't think of anything on the spot, mate, to be honest.
That's fine. Don't worry.
No.
And for those who are interested in what you do and seeing some of your work and talking to you potentially about creating some logos or going on a brand development journey or even getting some prints done, where can people reach out? What's best to reach out to them and start that conversation with you?
Cool. Yeah, 2 websites basically. Design website is designpit.co.uk. And that is the company, that's the limited company. Contact form on there, also on Instagram and Facebook as well. And then the print side is printpit.online. And again, that's on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't really know. In fact, I don't even have a Twitter anymore, I don't think. But Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn are the networks I'm on most. There is a YouTube channel for Design Pit as well. So I'm pretty contactable. Probably the main one, designpit.co.uk. Go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for the time, my friend.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you, ladies and gents, for coming back and joining me once again. I hope you took value from this episode. And I really, really enjoyed catching up with Gareth. It was really, really good fun. And we were able to articulate a little bit and explore a little bit on those topics that I think sometimes people find very difficult to talk about and are, sometimes a bit challenging or a bit more difficult to discuss as well. So thank you to Gareth if he's listening back for actually sharing those as well. And if you did enjoy this episode, I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below, and feel free to leave it with a like if you enjoyed it. And I will see you very, very soon for some brand new content, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, evening or night whenever you are consuming this. So I'll see you very, very soon.